Welcome to this webinar entitled JCOIN 2.0 Assistance Webinar. We are going to, there's three of us presenting. Next slide. Myself, I'm in the middle there, John Schneider. I'm a professor of medicine and epidemiology of medicine and public health sciences. We also have Olga Morozova. She's the technical assistance core lead, assistant professor in the Department of Public Health Sciences, and Phil Schum, who's in the director of biostatistics and statistical computing in the Center for Translational Data Science at the University of Chicago. And we're three of the representatives of MAARC today. Next slide. So briefly, I'm going to just give a quick overview of what the MAARC is. MAARC stands for Methodology and Advanced Analytics Resource Center. And then we'll move to Olga, who will present a bit on the technical consulting options for applicants for hubs in JCOIN 2.0. I'll speak a little bit about the data collection software that we options that we have to support through the MAARC. Phil will present on some of the data commons and data management pieces in the MAARC, and then we'll have some time for questions and discussions. And my hope is that this will only last, our presentation component will only last around 30 minutes. And so we can then take questions through the chat, which will be monitored by our colleagues at the CTC with Julia and Braden. Next slide, please. So what is the MAARC? So the MAARC 2.0 builds upon a successful MAARC 1.0, which is really the method center and kind of data management and coordination center for the JCOIN network. So we provide a national resource in identifying, assessing, and implementing essential interventions to address the evolving overdose epidemic among people experiencing criminal legal involvement. So the intersection of substance use and criminal legal involvement. We're going to conduct novel empirical research to ensure timely understanding of changes in current practices in the U.S. related to addressing SUD and overdose in criminal legal settings and affected individuals. And this is a little different from traditional data coordinating centers that usually don't conduct their own research. The MAARC does conduct research as well, and in MAARC 1 there's primary data collection, and in 2.0 it's mostly secondary and other metadata analysis. The activities will include overall leadership and coordination of centralized data management, data infrastructure support inclusive of any data harmonization activities, and providing resources for advanced methodologic and analytic techniques across the network. So that's across the centers, the resource centers, sites, conducting research on dynamic changes in policy and practice in criminal legal and relevant community-based service settings. That's mostly through survey work and other mathematical modeling. And then conducting novel studies applying cutting-edge analytic techniques to existing data and data collected across the JCOIN network. So our hope is really to use this network and collaborate through this network to make the sum greater than the parts. Next slide, please. Here's just a brief schematic. I'll direct you to the bottom that has the black circle there. These are the different cores in the MAARC. So we have a technical assistance core, which is led by Olga, who's on the call. We have a modeling core that does mostly mathematical and agent-based modeling, a data analytics and support core that's led by Phil, who's on the call, the geospatial core, which provides geospatial and other spatial analytics support and resources, a policy landscape core, and a survey research core. Those two are doing our primary data collection. The blue arrow points us to the JCOIN Steering Committee, which, you know, hopefully some of the people on this call will join as successful hubs. And so there's an opportunity to guide what happens in the cores coming from the JCOIN Steering Committee. Next slide, please. I'm going to pass it over to Olga.
Thank you, John. As John said, my name is Olga Morozova. I'm an assistant professor in the Department of Public Health Sciences at U Chicago and the director of the Technical Assistance Core in the MAARC 2.0. And I'm going to briefly talk about the technical consulting available to the applicants for research and innovation hubs. So we will be happy to provide online expert consultations up to 2 30-minute long sessions per applicant free of charge. And it can be longer if you need some consulting or assistance for data collection related consultations. These consultations are available to the applicants for research and innovation hubs. These are the 2 RFAs that we're talking about. There are 2 other concurrent RFAs for the center grants. These do not fall under this expert consultation framework that we're discussing today. So we're only talking about the consulting available to research and innovation hub applicants. We provide expertise in the following broad areas: methodologic questions, substantive questions, data collection software, and available resources, including JCOIN Data Commons. And John and Phil will talk later today about the data collection software and JCOIN Data Commons. And I'm going to talk in a little bit more detail in the next slide about the methodologic expertise and substantive expertise that we can provide consultations on. Next slide, please. So we have a wide array of methodologic expertise that we would be happy to consult you on. That includes study design, analytic approaches for a wide range of study designs, administrative data analysis, analysis of electronic health records, modeling studies, economic and cost effectiveness analysis, geospatial analysis, network data collection and analysis, and qualitative data collection and analysis. This is not an exhaustive list. If there is a need in methodologic expertise for your proposal that you don't exactly see on this list, chances are that we do have this expertise, so please don't hesitate and do submit the TA request. We also have expertise in substantive topics, including structure and operations of criminal legal system and substance use disorder treatment, harm reduction, and recovery support. Next slide, please. A few disclaimers. As part of the technical assistance available to the Research and Innovation Hub applicants, the MAARC cannot offer conducting new data analysis or review application grants. For 2 reasons. First of all, we want to ensure that there is fair competition and no advantage to certain applicants over the other. And second of all, this would require resources, additional resources that we may not necessarily be able to accommodate. The receipt of the technical assistance from the MAARC is not required for the successful application. The MAARC will have no influence on funding decisions. Next slide, please. And I'm gonna pass it back to John.
For that. And yeah, and thanks for those last 2 points. I mean, I see this as sort of office for students, right? It's not required, can be helpful, but you know, to be used when there's a need. So I'm going to move on towards on data collection strategies and software. You know, as you put your proposals together, you're going to be thinking through, you know, if you're doing primary data collection, what that might look like, and what sort of data collection system you're going to deploy. So we have, at the end, you'll see we'll give you some links to different resources. We've created a really, what I think is a nice document, mostly developed by Phil, with some input from myself, as to what are some of the pros and cons of different data collection strategies and software. I was saying that there are pros and cons of different data collection strategies and software. We have, as many universities have adopted REDCap as our primary tool for sort of clinical trials other sorts of NIH-funded studies. You know, we're not saying here right now that, you know, Red Cap has to be the data collection software. We just know that it's much easier if that is the one for data downstream data harmonization across hubs, sharing sharing data, packaging of data. It's just, anyways, the this data software that people select has implications for data sharing, and there needs to be compliance with the 2023 policy on data sharing, and as I mentioned, interacting with the MAARC infrastructure, and we will provide 1 hour of free consultation for all interested applicants. Next slide, please. And so after people have been selected to be the hubs as part of JCOIN, we will provide a lot of post-award REDCap consulting. Right now, over half of the current hubs in JCOIN 1.0 use REDCap. Some don't have primary data collection, but we have a lot of experience providing support for REDCap projects. So that includes guidance on creating and configuring REDCap to yield high quality data and support by study execution, best practices for creating forms, use of advanced features, use of APIs to add features and or link to other systems. You know, I will also say that, you know, if you are from an institution that does not have an institutional REDCap membership, we are able to support having REDCap at your site, and as well as sometimes we have community partners who don't have REDCap as well. So there's gonna be that type of support post-award as well. We have pre-made forms corresponding to common data elements that can be incorporated into study-specific projects. And there's available web-based services provided by us, including ID assignment, duplicate checkers, adaptive randomization, and linkage to adaptive survey items and testing. So for example, we have the CAT-MH, that's sort of an adaptive survey for mental health items and for substance use disorder, which can be deployed through REDCap. And then software for data export and packaging. And I will pass it on to Phil.
Okay, thank you, John. I would like to start just by saying a few words about what we call the JCOIN Data Commons, because a lot of the services that the MAARC makes available to JCOIN members are through the Data Commons. The Data Commons, if you're not familiar with the term, is somewhat distinct from a data repository, which you almost certainly are familiar with. And a Data Commons co-locates both the data, but also cloud computing infrastructure. And that infrastructure typically includes software services, tools, and then applications for discovering, managing, integrating, analyzing, and sharing data. And then finally, a Data Commons typically has an API or an application programming interface. And the key thing there is that it allows it to operate or to interoperate with other data resources. The MAARC has built a Data Commons for JCOIN, called the JCOIN Data Commons. You can go to the URL there, which I've listed. And this was initially created to facilitate data management, analysis, and sharing of data within the JCOIN network. It's a secure platform, FedRAMP moderate approved. And the way this has worked in the past is that the JCOIN individual sites, research sites or hubs, submit de-identified data And in the past, they've done that on a quarterly basis to the actual JCOIN Data Commons. What the Data Commons provides are cloud-based workspaces that include common analytics software, Stata, RStudio, Jupyter Lab, and so forth. And the other feature about the JCOIN Data Commons is that it interoperates with the HEAL data platform, for those who may be familiar with that. And if you're not, just very briefly, and I've included the URL for the HEAL data platform, that is a federated data ecosystem or a data mesh, if you're familiar with that term, that essentially provides search and discovery across all HEAL-funded studies. And the way it works is that it doesn't store any data, but it interoperates with all of the NIH and other data repositories where HEAL investigators deposit their data, and provides access to those data, search and discovery, and then subsequently access to those data under whatever use restrictions may exist at the local repository. So it doesn't replace the local repositories, it just makes centralized access easier and pooling data and so forth. It also includes rich metadata, both study level metadata, so descriptions of the study and so forth, the population, but also variable level metadata. So you can think of that like a code book, a data set code book, if you're familiar with that. And then finally, the HEAL data platform provides strides, enables cloud-based workspaces. So basically lets anyone compute over the data for which they have access. So now back to JCOIN and the MAARC. Next slide, please. So the primary services that the MAARC will be providing focused around the JCOIN Data Commons. The first is the MAARC supports the JCOIN core measures. And the core measures are essentially a set of common data elements that were identified by a group working within JCOIN and approved by the steering committee. And all of the hubs collect those in addition to special data they may be collected. And so the value of that, for those of you who are familiar with concept of CDs, the value of that is that it ensures standardization in the way, and best practice in the way in which those data are collected, but then really facilitates analyses that people might do by combining data across sites, and then even combining them with data sets that may lie outside of JCOIN. And so the MAARC does a lot to sort of facilitate the use of and to really maximize the value of those core measures. Before I say anything about that, let me also assure you that the MAARC also tries to support additional data measurement modules that hubs may be using, especially those that are shared or by at least two or more hubs. So our support and involvement is not strictly limited to those core measures. What the MAARC does with those is to organize regular data submissions from each of the hubs. So they sort of pull together the data they have collected thus far, de-identified data, and submit them to the JCOIN Data Commons. The way that works is that we provide a schema, a formal schema for those core measures, together with software tools that the hub can use to facilitate their data management, and then validate a data set before they actually submit it to the JCOIN Data Commons. Any data submitted by a hub initially, the access to those data is restricted exclusively to that hub and that hub's staff only. And there is an established process established by the steering committee for JCOIN members to make requests for use of shared data. And so it's only after that, after a requester has gone through that process and has an approved request for data sharing, that the MAARC will put together a package for that project, a data package, and then allow the collaborators who are working on it together to share and use those data securely. One thing I want to emphasize briefly is that all of our processes are, well, all of the software tools we create are open source, and all of the processes are open and freely available to use and to share. And so one experience that we've had in the past and hope to repeat going forward is that by utilizing these tools and processes we provide, or incorporating them into what hubs are doing locally, it really gives them an opportunity to improve their local data management processes as well. So it doesn't just lead to sort of shared data between groups, but also improvement potentially within each group. And the MAARC really will provide two key services. As I mentioned before, we will use the data that have been submitted to create project-specific data packages that data requesters can use for specific analyses. And then getting closer to the end of the project, the MAARC will work directly with each of the hubs and utilizing its infrastructure to facilitate broader data sharing in consistent with the requirements of the new NIH data sharing guidelines. And that includes both publication-related data sharing, so that the MAARC can help a hub who has just published a paper and now needs to share the data that went into or support that paper, having them share that in an effective and efficient way that does not require much effort on the part of the hubs. And then also sharing the entire data set that a hub has collected at the end of their study. So in conclusion, the MAARC offers quite a bit to JCOIN hubs by way of data management and also facilitating being compliant with their data sharing requirements, and also making data available during the period of the award for hubs that might want to collaborate, or people might want to make requests. And so that's, and we provide those services in a number of ways as I've described. So back to you, John.
Yeah, so no, I just want to thank everyone for joining. Here's the link to the landing page where a TA request can go in. And it's under the methods, analytics, technical assistance. And here's our other contact information. Feel free also to reach out to us if you have any questions that are not answered or discussed in the question and answer phase.